Hello and welcome to everybody. I'm delighted to be here with you today to discuss about this important topic, employment and education in the European Rail. My name is Alberto Mazzola. I'm the new Executive Director of the Community of European Railways and Infrastructure Companies since the 1st of January this year. And I would like to thank our partners, Comboios de Portugal, Portuguese Railways, and the Portuguese Presidency, who helped us to organize today's event. A big thank also to our speakers, whom I will present shortly, and of course to all of you for tuning in today from across Europe. Some quick housekeeping rules before we get started. The event will last 1 hour and a half, and we invite you to ask questions in the chat. I will take them on board when we come to the question and answers later on. Employment and education in the Rail is important, especially in this difficult context of the COVID crisis. The green and digital transformation is more than ever at the center of the EU policy, is the new growth policy for Europe in the next 20 years. Let me say, green, the railway credentials in green are very strong. For any passenger or ton of freight we transport in railways, we consume 9 times less of CO2, we produce 9 times less of CO2, and we consume 7 times less of energy. So no need to present our green credentials. Of course, we have also our digital credentials, and we are working very hard to, I would say, introduce digital content in our lines, to automate, to increase the performances, to get closer to our clients and provide new application, new digital application for them. We need to do that. The European Smart and Sustainable Mobility Strategy foresees to double high-speed rail passengers by 2030, from today on, and to double rail freight traffic by 2050. This will need a lot of investment, but this will lead also not just physical investment, but also digital investment. Railways have been a forward-looking employers across Europe for a number of years, providing a lot of jobs. We are #1 top employers in most of the European countries, and we are certainly among top 3 employers in all countries in Europe. In many of the countries, railways have been awarded as top employers for many years for the quality of the work, working condition, career prospect, professional and personal development. But of course, we'll have our challenges for the next 10 years. This morning at 8:30, I was meeting 2 CEOs of infrastructure managers in Europe and 2 CEOs of rail freight companies. And all together, we are talking about digital capacity management, how to be able to manage all the infrastructure capacity we have in Europe with a click and ride. It's not so easy, but certainly is a challenge we have in front of us. Another challenge we have in front of us in the next 10 years, many of the people working in railways will retire. We will need also to renew. And for this, we need to reach new talents, to bring new digital capacity, digital competence inside railways. We are not the only one. We are in competition in many other businesses that we want to increase their digital capacity. Of course, we are doing our job and we are preparing ourselves in order to hire as many as possible young people in our companies, liaising with university and schools, and also developing training programs. Today we will discuss all these issues. First, we will have our welcoming speech from the Portuguese Minister of Infrastructure and Housing, Pedro Nuno Santos. Unfortunately, to a last-minute change in his agenda, he could not be with us live, but he sent a video. We will then hear from the European Commissioner for Jobs and Social Rights, Nicolas Schmit, and we have an interesting panel discussion where Professor Andrade Ferreira, from our partner, the Railway Competence Centre in Portugal, will develop and we start the panel discussion. Then Carlo Scatoli for DG Employment, Barbara Thaler, member of the European Parliament, and Eckhard Voss, managing partner for a consulting company. We will follow on with other intervention from the audience, as well as question and answers from different participants. Let me say, before giving the floor to the Minister Pedro Nuno Santos a few words. We have been in contact during these months, very strict contact with him. We met with him in January personally. We participated in an association, the launch of the European Year of Railway on the 29th of March. Minister Pedro Nuno Santos also degreed in economics, and he has begun his political career as a socialist youth at the age of 14. And from 2004 to 2008, he was the Secretary General of the Youth Organization in Portugal. He entered the Portuguese Parliament in 2005, and he defines himself as a social democrat and a staunch supporter of understandings among the parties of the Portuguese left. He was the Secretary of State of Parliamentary Affairs in the previous government. He is today the Minister of Infrastructure and Housing during this 21st Portuguese government. I will give him the floor, and then it will follow by the keynote speech of Nicolas Schmit, European Commissioner. Please. Thank you. I think many important points that we definitely share the dream about railways, not just the dream, but we share the view of the Minister that we need to invest both in our physical infrastructure and also our human resources. I will now give the floor to Nicolas Schmit, European Commissioner for Jobs and Social Rights. Nicolas Schmit is a politician from Luxembourg, serving as European Commissioner for Jobs and Social Rights since 2019. A member of the Luxembourg Socialist Working Party, he was previously a member of the government of Luxembourg from 2004 to 2019, and a member of the European Parliament in 2019. In 2004, Commissioner Schmit was appointed first Juncker Luxembourg Ministry as Minister Delegate for Foreign Affairs and Immigration, working under Jan Asselborn as Minister for Foreign Affairs. After 2009, he was promoted to the office of Minister of Labour and Employment and Immigration in Luxembourg. I think you are following the same career, and you will be promoted Commissioner for Employment and Jobs and Social Rights. We are very keen to hear from you your views about how we can, as railways, fulfill our dream also in our human resources. Please, Commissioner, thank you for joining us. The screen is yours.
Again? Okay.
Yes, we hear you. Thank you.
In fact, the rail sector has achieved a lot already. Rail is the only transport mode to have reduced emissions almost continuously since 1990. It now accounts for less than 1% of transport emissions. This is why the European Commission wants the rail transport of goods to increase by 50% by 2030 and to double by 2050. And as already mentioned, this means indeed a high and constant level of investment. Rail is also a smart, safe, and reliable mode of transport that allows millions of Europeans to work across borders or travel our continent. And we can boast the longest rail network in the world, which helps our citizens to be better connected and enjoy access to quality service. This being said, there are also many challenges that lie ahead. These are often related with digital transitions, such as the needed improvement of the exchange of data between national networks and on providing better digital services to users. Meeting these challenges requires investments, and this is where the EU can help. We have made available to member states unprecedented funding to restart and modernize economies. And we welcome the fact that the rail investments are present in several member states' recovery plans. One could say that the CER's mantra, "The future is rail," was heard and adopted. The modernization of rail will involve digitalization and automation of tasks. This is also a question of security, by the way. And I think of driverless operations, the automation of planning, or predictive maintenance. Does it mean the sector will automatically lose jobs? Not necessarily. It is, as always, a question of how we shape this transformation. Automation and digitalization can and should create jobs, and often quality jobs. But to transition from one job into another, workers will need to develop the skills to integrate these new technologies. This is why the European Year of Rail puts the focus rightly on employment and education. And we want to help the 1 million workers of the rail sector to learn throughout their career and adapt to change. How to do this? First, we need the right intelligence. This is why the Commission will soon publish a study on recommendations to manage the impact of automation and digitalization on the transport workforce. We also have to accompany companies that want their employees to develop new skills. The project Staffer, which you will discuss today, is an example of how to upskill the sector workforce through vocational education and training. It will be one method to train the system engineers, the architects, or the IT security specialists that the sector needs. Staffer is a good project, but we certainly need also a more structured partnership. This is why the Commission is reaching out to the mobility, transport, automotive, industrial ecosystem to encourage companies to take up reskilling commitments as part of what we call the Pact for Skills. And I hope this initiative will bear fruits for the benefit of all your employees. And the Pact for Skills has precisely the purpose to bring together all stakeholders in an ecosystem to exchange good practices and promote reskilling efforts. It also can help to find the right financing for these projects. Besides upskilling and reskilling, another priority is to attract new talents to the sector. In many of your countries, more than half of the workforce will retire in the next 10 years. And if rail keeps expanding, as it should, your companies will need to hire. And here I believe there are two priorities. First, we have to do more to make the sector attractive to women, who only make up only a fifth of the workforce. I know this is a priority for you, and I want to use this occasion to pay tribute to the action of social partners on the topic of gender equality. The CER and the European Transport Workers Federation are working jointly to promote the presence of women in the rail sector. Once again, social dialogue proves key to improve people's representation and integration in the industry. The Commission is also taking action to fight prejudice. We are, for example, developing educational toolkits to help fight gender stereotypes at school based on the example of the transport sector. The second priority, a very urgent one, is to attract young people. The pandemic left many without a job, but the rail sector can offer them good perspectives. Permanent contracts, for example, are the norm in your companies and for all levels of education. And I absolutely share what the Portuguese Minister has said about precarious jobs and the difficulties for young people to enter quality jobs on the labor market. And I think here your sector is a good and solid opportunity for the young. The rail sector offers more than good working conditions. Younger generations are looking for green and meaningful occupations. Rail offers both the opportunity to promote sustainable transport and the opportunity to offer a service to people to connect them across regions and borders. This is valuable, especially after the pandemic that has kept all of us apart. And finally, we also have to speak about life experiences, and these are important. Working in the rail sector can be about driving trains across sceneries, cultures, languages, It is about looking after sleeper trains. Those sleeper trains we used to board on decades ago, and they are being revived today. And this is good news, and especially also for traveling through Europe. To attract young people, we need to provide them with this vision, but we also have to provide training opportunities. We will not have qualified workers tomorrow if we do not start training them today. Germany or the Netherlands, for instance, regularly offer apprenticeships in rail, but we need other countries to follow suit. We want, for example, to organize a joint event with the Austrian Federal Railways in December under the European Alliance for Apprenticeships. It would be the occasion to address topics like digitalization and skills, as well as the mobility of apprentices in the rail industry. I hope it will also be the occasion for rail companies to make new commitments to recruit apprentices. Vocational training remains an extremely valuable way to provide the right skills and to find the right talents. The Commission is promoting vocational education and encourages companies to engage on this track, and I hope this will be done also by the rail industry. Let me conclude with a slogan used by the Portuguese Railways: always in movement. This translates well what rail is: an innovative sector that is like a train track, full of possibilities. We have to move fast now in the direction of a sustainable future, and rail is without any doubt an important actor in this context. Women and men who are part or will join the sector will help us transform our economy, provided we give them the right skilling opportunities. And there you can count on the help and the support of the European Commission. Thank you for your attention. And I wish you a very productive and interesting conference. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner, for your very kind words. First of all, also thank you for the support that DG Employment is giving to the social dialogue between railways and trade unions, as well as the support that you are giving us in many projects in training staff, cooperating with universities. They are very much appreciated. Also, the words that you said, green and meaningful occupation for young, is a very nice word. Probably we will use them also in our future. We are reflecting about Erasmus on rail and not on aviation. Maybe we can put them together and find also next way how to proceed in this way. So I would say we are very much appreciating your work and cooperation with DG Employment. We might come back to you on some of these ideas, and thank you very much. We will discuss your wording in the panel, and I think we'll follow on later with you on another moment. Thank you very much. So now we have 4 guests that will share their views and also discuss what the Portuguese ministers and Commissioner Schmit has presented. The first in our panel is Professor Luís Andrade Ferreira. He's representing also Comboios of Portugal. He's the Executive Director of the Railway Competence Centre in Portugal and Professor of the Faculty of Engineering of Oporto University. He has participated in international and national projects in different areas, technology areas, and you have been recently appointed, if I understand well, as Executive Director of the Portuguese Railway Centre. I listened to the Minister. He has very much confidence and trust that you will change. Certainly we bring more young people to railways, but we are here to hear your views on that. So please, Professor Ferreira.
Okay, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to be here to present our view on employment and in this sector, education employment in the sector railway sector from Portugal. Well, the first thing, next slide please. The first thing I have to show you is why we need in Portugal at this moment to develop a railway competence center. We have in the past few decades, divestment in railroad in Portugal. That has several consequences, but the most important of all was an abrupt reduction in skilled labor. And with that, other problems arise all along the railway system. But he is still convinced that a strong railroad structures a country. Next slide, please. Well, if you look at the Portuguese position in Europe, it was not a flattering one. By this study by BCG that looks at the performance of the railways all along Europe, next slide, please, we can see that the Portuguese position is not the best one, far from that, and is not improving. So something has to be done. Next slide, please. Well, the Portuguese government in 2019 decided to create a railway competence center that our minister has already talked about, with the objective to develop industrial, technological, and business capacities in the railway sector. Also, as a pact for competitiveness and internationalization was signed with the Portuguese rail cluster. The next slide, please. Well, this center will look to all the rail system, rolling stock, infrastructure, operation, maintenance, and having in mind that the rail system is part of the mobility overall system and contribute very strongly, as you've already heard today, to a carbon neutral society. Next slide, please. Will be near Porto in Matosinhos, and will be near an industrial railway unit, because you want to stay in the railway ecosystem. And another important point will be very close to one of the most important research campuses in Europe, that is here in Porto, and that being close is very important for us. Next slide, please. Our vision is that this center will have a capital importance in all areas of development for railway system, but in particular in the training of human capital. So it is our mission to develop, upgrade the skills that exist now in our country that are related with railways. Next slide, please. Well, what will be this CCF, the Center for Competencies in Railway? We'll have a rail school inside a railway ecosystem near the stakeholders that are the main operators here in Portugal, and also with companies that already work in the railway system. And we'll look at the Portuguese challenges from the Portuguese perspective, but not only for us, but also in an international view. So we look for European projects. Next slide, please. The rail school will have several objectives, but where we lack most of our competencies at this point now is people that have the courses level at 4 or 5. That means technicians in the different areas of knowledge. And we look to have people with expertise either in rolling stock and infrastructure. And the first point would be maintenance, but also all retrofitting of Portuguese railway stock and infrastructure. Next slide, please. Also, we have already a PhD in railway engineering at the University of Porto with 2 other universities, the University of Minho, another Portuguese university, and it's very curious because the University of São Paulo, that is the most important university in Latin America, wanted to join us because they are looking to Europe to understand how they can develop their own system in Brazil. Next slide, please. So if you look to the railway sector structure, traditionally the rail transport sector was in Europe been characterized by the prevalence of quasi-monopolies. And at a certain point, it was not shaken up. In the 90s, the European Union, the European Commission fostered the liberalization of the system, sometimes in good direction, sometimes not in so good direction, and different countries applied this liberalization in different ways and interpreted it in a different, with different legislation. It's not the same all over Europe. But anyway, it was something new that came up and less classic view of the railways. Next slide, please. Well, we look to the challenges we have, and we look at them from the point of view of innovation and also an industrial roadmap shared with the science and technology system. So we need to develop and modernize our equipment and products for rolling stock and railway infrastructure, but we need to do it now and caring about improving interoperability capacities at the European level. Also, we have many problems on interoperability in Europe, and we have to solve those problems. Also, railways have problems of obsolescence, difficult problems. Development and international projects will be a way to solve these problems I've been talking about. Shift to rail is a very good example that we have seen in the near past and will go on for the next 7 years. But we must start by a mindset change at the top management of companies. They must be open minded to new technologies, to this interoperability in Europe, not be closed on themselves and being up to the job. An example for motivation here in Portugal, we try to develop what we call the Portuguese train. We call the Portuguese train not a full train made in Portugal, but trying to incorporate more value, Portuguese value, in trains developed in Portugal for Portugal Railway, and why not export to other countries. So we try to motivate people like this. Well, we all know that the aging of population combined with lack of technical skills, that's not only a problem for the railway sector, it's very broad in industry. We lack in Europe technical skills, might thus become a bottleneck in maintaining this competitive position that you have had in Europe for a long term. Next slide, please. Okay, we have to redefine skills for the rail system. We already talked about that. Please, next slide. Okay, what actions we think that are very important? First of all, you must have in mind that you have actions for the short and medium term skills. Yes, we need to look at long term, but at the short and medium term, we have problems to solve. So we have to take action now to solve these problems. We have to train young people by showing the attractiveness of the sector. If we compare, for instance, with airspace engineering or even automotive engineering, they seem to be more attractive to younger people. They look at trends to be very classic sector, very old-fashioned in a certain way, and it's not good. So we must improve our action. Attracting more human, please go ahead, and I'll finish soon. Introduce digital skills and boost railway digitalization, and to be able to strengthen the link between education, training, and world of work, and demonstrate this attractive sector. Everyone talks about hydrogen. We are first using hydrogen in our operation. Everyone speaks about electrifying cars. We have been using electricity for a long time. Attract prestigious schools. It's also very important to this job. Okay, I finish here. Thank you for your attention.
Professor Ferreira, thank you very much for your presentation and the challenges you presented. I think we will discuss that later on among the panels. And let me say that also all railways in Europe are making similar efforts. That's an important point.
Yes.
Many academies, so developing PhD studies, masters with university, because as you said, we need to attract people. And
Yes.
the best people we can attract, the better railways will be. I will now give the floor to Carlo Scatoli, senior expert for DG Employment, skills and qualification. He has been involved for 20 years in development and coordination of European instruments supporting learning and career mobility. He has coordinated implementation of Europass. I don't know if you will say something on this. It will be interesting also for railways. European Qualification Framework, and has followed the works of the Euro Guidance Network and represented the Commission in the European Lifelong Guidance Policy Network. He's a graduate in philosophy from the University of Padua. I will not raise questions to you, but I think the impact of digitalization on railways is important in two terms: attracting new resources, new skills, but also, I would say, training the existing also people, the current people working in railways. So
Yes.
let us hear from you what is the view of the Commission on that, and maybe also on the Pact for Skills. We'll be here after the Commission announces it. If you can say something, please. You have the floor.
Yes, good afternoon to all, and thank you for inviting me to this stimulating webinar. Indeed, as you say, digitization is crucial today. And we are, of course, at European level, trying really to do all we can to help people develop the digital skills they need at many levels, at all levels, I would say. First of all, it is very important to start from the beginning, so to start from how a school equips young people with digital skills. And here it's really crucial to be aware of the need to change our attitude. Digital skills in the 21st century have become really basic skills, just as reading and writing and arithmetic. These are the what are those that are commonly considered very basic skills. And now digital skills have become part of this absolutely necessary set of very basic skills. And for this, we have launched we have updated actually the digital action plan, digital education action plan, to make sure that all pupils that come out of schools have a minimum level of digital skills. And of course, as education level goes up, the level of digital skills which is needed will also increase. But then, as Dr. Mazzola mentioned, we also need to think of those who have already left schools and who are now working and that couldn't learn digital skills when they were pupils in schools, and they have to do it now as they are workers. So for this, there are a number of actions that we have been launching at European level. And it is quite crucial that member states use in an appropriate way the important resources which have been made available, the usual resources of the European Social Fund, which remains the main European instrument for upskilling and reskilling workers, but also the additional and very important resources of the Resilience and Recovery Facility, which indeed highlighted the relevance of skills for the green transition and skills for the digital transition as being very important. I think that if we are able not only to equip the current workers of the railway sector with the digital skills which they need, but also to be able to advertise the railway sector as a sector where digital skills are important, this will also be a good move when it comes to recruiting new talent, recruiting young people and recruiting young women in particular, calling them to work in the railway sector. Because now there is an interesting paradox when it comes to women and employment in general. We know that women are better than men when it comes to education. We boast about having reached the target of 40% of young people with a tertiary qualification. Well, to be totally honest, it is in fact the women which have reached this important target because more than 40% of women, of young women in Europe have a tertiary qualification, and this makes up for the number of men which still don't have for it. On the other hand, and this is the paradox which I mentioned, on the labor market, women are disadvantaged. They find it more difficult than men to find a good job. One reason for this might be that less women than men are graduating scientific and technological disciplines, which are the most requested on the labor market. But still, there are many young women who have technological qualification, scientific qualification, and which could be attracted towards a sector in rapid evolution like the railway sector, where this kind of professionalities can be really important to contribute to the evolution of the sector, to make it fully fit to the digital and the green transition. The Commission already mentioned the Staffer project. Staffer is an interesting alliance which brings together the most important stakeholders in the private sector, and I think this will be better explained by one of the panelists after my intervention. And this is a good start, as the Commissioner mentioned. There is a recent initiative which was part of a skills agenda launched in 2020, which we call the Pact for Skills, which wants to bring this to an even higher scale. And we are confident that the railway sector will be one of the sectors where we will have indeed a proper Pact for Skills, bringing together all the relevant stakeholders, the two social partners, first of all, employers and workers associations, but also vocational training centers, also higher education.
I think we might have lost Mr. Scatoli. My understanding is correct. And I suggest, I think our next speaker is Barbara Thaler. She will not join visually, but she can hear and speak with us. You are also on the screen. I was told that you cannot. So thank you, Barbara. Barbara is an Austrian politician of the Austrian People Party. She has been elected member of the European Parliament in 2019. Before entering politics, she was an entrepreneur in the digital sector with her own startup. And since 2019, she has been very active in the Committee on Transport and Tourism, sorry, Mr. Scatoli, and a substitute member of the INCO, Internal Market and Consumer Protection. By the way, you have been Shadow Rapporteur of the European Year of Rail. And I think it will be very good to hear from you when you discussed in Parliament the European Year of Rail, what were the assumptions and what you discussed in relation to education and employment in railways. As you have seen, we want to be a competitive employer. So being able to attract the best talent in our sectors, but we would like to hear your view as member of parliament, active member of parliament on this topic. Please, Barbara.
Yeah, thank you very much, Alberto. Competition is indeed, in my opinion, the most important word when it comes to the rail sector. But good afternoon to everyone, first of all, and thanks again for the invitation. My short intervention on this topic will try to sketch out an answer on the question, who should be responsible for what, and to be precise, which decisions demand the European level, which responsibilities lie within the rail sector itself, and yeah, what decisions have to be made at an individual level when it comes to employment and careers in the rail sector. But due to my role as MEP, I have only competences to tackle problems from a supranational point of view. However, and I sincerely believe this, European actions can only be successfully implemented and executed if they do not depend on decisions which have to be made on the individual level, yeah? Which means that each level should decide what's in its ultimate premise. So the very question which every one of us already faced was, what education should I pursue and where should I begin my career, right? And this question cannot be answered by someone else, just by ourselves. So there are only a handful of decisions individuals must take which have such a profound and long-lasting impact. And we as a society, we should not and we cannot take away this responsibility. The success in doing an apprenticeship training or a degree in the fields of science, technology, or engineering was and is and will always be based on the unique personal interest. And this interest, of course, can be influenced by friends, by family, or by economic incentives. But at least it's a very personal decision. But there are scores of highly gifted people who are simply not interested in pursuing a career in a special field, even if they could make it to the very top. So what we can and ought to do as society is to ensure that those who want to pursue a career in rail also have the opportunity to do so. And this means, for example, looking out for people who cannot pursue a degree in the field of mathematics or engineering because their socio-economic background would prevent them from doing so. And in the case of women, there are still additional cultural restraints which needed to be tackled better today than tomorrow. So in a nutshell, if an individual shows interest and talent, it is the responsibility of Europe to provide him or her with the opportunity to pursue this path. This could be a classical will-win situation. And from my point of view, this is one of the main responsibilities of the European Union. So providing and safeguarding the right that each and everyone within our union has equal opportunities. Of course, I know this is easier said than done, but if we are looking back a generation or two, we are making tremendous progress. So switching from the European societal level towards the particular needs of the rail sector, I cannot help but addressing the elephant in the room, which is competition, Alberto, which was our first word. The competitiveness of the rail sector towards the road sector, to be honest. And to be more specific, the generated revenues and the resulting different opportunities each sector can offer highly skilled employees. And if we want rail to flourish as much as road, the sector needs to attract those highly gifted and hardworking individuals, which in return give you an edge towards your competitors. So in the past, the rail sector usually scored with a very stable and secure workplace environment. This is good. Don't get me wrong. This is very good, but it might not be the benefit which will attract and bind those future employees. So from my point of view, this builds the case for more and fair competition within the rail sector. Besides providing citizens with equal opportunities, the more tailor-made European task for the rail sector is to ensure the opportunity for rail to take advantage of the internal market as well. And speaking about internal market, I have to mention economies of scale, and especially economies of scale derived from the same standards and procedure is something the rail sector desperately needs. And by the way, this is very well showcased in aviation and road. Otherwise, there will not be a level playing field within the other modes of transport. And consequently, the transformation of the rail sector from almost closed national markets towards a fully open single market is a fundamental prerequisite. Without it, rail will lack the strength and ability to successfully compete with the road sector. And here, I mean competing for customers and for employees alike. So to sum it up, if a person wants to be attractive for future employers, he or she needs to transform himself into someone who can offer a demanded set of skills. And the very same applies to the rail sector. It also needs to transform itself in order to be attractive and demanded as a mode of transport for customers and as an employer. Politics can only provide the right framework for the rail sector to be attractive, and the rail sector can provide the right framework to be attractive for the employees. But the work and the ultimate decision to transform has to be done by you as a sector. And I liked it very much to come to an end now, Alberto. Sorry for speaking so long, but it's a very important topic. I liked it very much what Commissioner Schmit said at the beginning. It's about how we create the transformation. Yes, and so this is it for me for the moment. Thank you very much for giving me the floor. I am really looking forward to our discussion at the end of the panelists. Thank you, Alberto.
Thank you, Barbara. We meet quite often also in the Rail Forum Europe, where with 15 members of the European Parliament, we discussed the railway issues. And I would say she launched some challenges. I will give the floor. Our next speaker is Eckhard Voss, Managing Partner of WMP Consult, Wilke Mack GmbH. Eckhard Voss is Senior Advisor and Managing Partner in Consultancy, based in Hamburg, Germany. He is an expert of social and employment affairs. He has a strong track record of working with social partners in the European Union, including railways, where we are working together in these days in at least 2 projects. He has been also coordinator of our virtual European Rail Academy and is responsible project manager in CR-ETF project on employability, Stafford Erasmus Blueprint Consortium. I will give you the floor to hear your views, and then I understand we will hear another speaker coming from the railways that we will announce later on. Please, Eckhard, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Alberto, and thank you very much for providing me the opportunity to make some remarks and provide you with some information on recent studies that have been very relevant for the topic of employment and education in the railway sector, and in particularly with view on the transitions and the challenges the previous speakers have mentioned, including competition. But I will not refer to the issue of competition, but I think there is a need always to combine, as was strongly mentioned by Minister Santos in the beginning in the welcome speech, to combine stable and good working conditions and competitiveness and a competitive market position. And I think this very much relates to the framework conditions. And my input will be very much on the human factor in organizing and managing the railway transformation. I think you should, Laura, you should move to the next slide. I don't have the control, so I will just mention that. So why is the human factor so important? And I would like to stress that there are new requirements, of course, regards skills, knowledges, and competences related to digitalization, and the acquisition of new skills related to decarbonization and other issues. But it is also important to pay attention to the human factor and the involvement, the taking employees and workers on board in change processes. I've been involved in a number of studies. I will explain in a minute a bit more about that, but one key lesson was that change processes, transformation processes, without what was mentioned by Minister Santos, a fair and just transition process is likely to fail. And there are several examples related to digitalization and automation in the past that we have identified in that context. The human factor is also, of course, very, very important, because the future railway workforce will be different from the current one. The retirement wage has been mentioned already. There are other issues related to the need to promote and foster a more diverse workforce, diverse teams. The issue of gender equality has already been mentioned in this context, and this is also very much about the future potential in railways, as well as related to a good situation on the international railway market and within the transport sector. It's related to innovation capacities and other issues. And the human factor also should not be neglected in the strong requirement and move towards fostering transnational railways, both in the field of freight, the promotion and the increase of capacities on transnational freight corridors, but also transnational passenger transport. And here we have been focusing some research on this issue. And if we move to the next slide, please. Transnational railways has been the focus of some of the studies we did in the past. One important study was carried out in 2019 and 20, co-financed by more than 20 individual railway companies, commissioned by UIC in cooperation with CER, and 3 key recommendations regarding what is the need of further cooperation and transnational cooperation in railways against all the major trends that have been mentioned already by previous speakers. The first one is there is a strong need of creating a single European hub for exchange of railway knowledge and expertise. I think this was also mentioned already in the context of the presentation of Professor Ferreira. So very close to that. The second one is that there is an urgent need to develop human resources, develop concepts of fostering transnational mobility in railways. And here we discovered across all countries a strong feeling that there is an urgent need. And the third area is developing vocational education and training concepts that are addressing issues related to the European transnational railway area. And here it comes to what was mentioned before, the need to do much more than in the past. And in this context, previous speakers have already mentioned the Staffe project, which I will briefly introduce to you now. Yeah, this is the Skill Training Alliance for the Future of the European Railways. It's a 4 years project, and I think we can look at all figures because avoiding running out of time. So as Staffe was mentioned before, I just focus on the issue that it's already quite a comprehensive pact related to skills, as Mr. Scatoli has mentioned, to another EU initiative. CER and UNIFE is involved in that, and they are very much coordinating many activities in this context, but Staffe is focusing really on developing skills for the future railway system in Europe. And of course, we are addressing short-term as well as medium-term skills needs. Currently, we just have started. We are in the working on the first 3-4 work packages, but in the context and yeah, in the context of these work packages, I think it's slide, yeah, thanks. In the context of these work packages, we will conduct not only a skills analysis as has been done already in previous studies. Shift to Rail was mentioned. There has been a human capital report series in that, but we will look into depth first into specific occupational profiles, and in that context we are going to start working, or we have started to work on the ESCO classification that has been developed by DG Employment, and here in particularly on railway specific jobs. And secondly, we will focus on the needs in terms of cross-border competences, of developing European mindsets that, according to previous studies and to our exchange with companies in railway operating and in infrastructure manager, are very important in order to increase the efficiency and capacities of cross-border railways. And in the second part of Staffe, starting in 2022, there will be work packages developing mobility and exchange programs. And I see, Alberto, perhaps just the next slide, because I will go back to the human factor here. I would like to stress very much that the sectoral social dialogue is a crucial element, must be a crucial element in managing and shaping change. And in railways, we have been working with colleagues on other sectoral social dialogues. Railway sectoral social dialogue compared to others is very proactive, forward-looking, as you, Alberto, have mentioned, reflecting also a strong culture of exchange with trade unions and social partners within railway companies that has been driven very much by, for example, Giorgio Tutti as the chairman of the European Trade Union Federation in Railway and the Railway section, as well as Matthias Rohrmann, president of the Sectoral Social Dialogue Committee on Railways. And I would like to stress very much the importance of this element. That is, it would also be interesting to compare that with other sectors that have been very much more affected by liberalization and act also at competitors of railways in the transport market. And I think it will be important to look also not only on investments and technologies and progress in the infrastructure and rolling stock, but also, as was highlighted very much by the Portuguese colleagues before, on the development of the right human potentials and the skills and the competences within the sector. I stop here now and give the screen back to you, Alberto. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Eckhard. I would like, you mentioned Matthias Rohrmann is with us today. You mentioned him. I would like to give him the floor briefly also to intervene. He's the president of the EU Social Dialogue Railway, representing railways, and is managing director AGV Move. And let me say, we heard from the Portuguese Minister, from the Commissioner, from many of the speakers, the importance of social dialogue. And I think I would like Matthias to get in the screen and also present your views concerning this important topic on employment and education. And then I would like, after your intervention, to get back to the four panelists, all of them on the screen, and react to what has been said, and maybe I will ask you a question. Matthias, please. I've seen you before. Here you are. You are muted.
So I hope it works now.
That's fine.
Okay. Many thanks, Alberto, and also thanks to Commissioner Schmit and the MEP Thaler. Yes, thanks for the opportunity to speak here as president of the Sectoral Social Dialogue of Railway. And of course, we need at the moment the right, what I would call the right changing of the switch. The rail sector is needed, I think, to make the European Green Deal to a success. And that requires sufficiently well-qualified and motivated staff. And that is why CR and also all European social partners are engaged in this field. And Eckhard just has given us a good overview. I would like to point out on one side the activities inside STAFFA. And here we focusing, for example, to the qualification with a view to all language issues on one side, and on the other side to the rail freight corridors, for example, and this European mindset that maybe is there more needed as we think as today. And to give you a vision, concrete examples, what we are doing there, what we would like to produce, that's maybe the idea to have in the future a joint model in qualification of all railway undertakings in Europe that are running cross-border traffics, or that if a train driver is running on a rail freight corridor on an RSC, that he or she knows that he is or she is part of this. This is what we mean with the European mindset. It's not the case at the moment. And so we try to strengthen also within the RSC the rule of the staff and what we can do to make railway professions fit for the future. And this also includes our plan, of course, to be the first sector to have an agreement for the employment and integration of women in the rail sector, to support them as workers for us. And I would like to say more women, more rail, or in another way, more diversity and a better railway. And for all these activities, we need your support and your help also to make this more visible. And I hope that it's maybe possible in this year of rail to have a joint event, maybe also with the commissioner or the MEPs or together, to show how attractive our sector is and that we are moving together for a positive, for a green future. Yeah, many thanks.
Thank you, Matthias, for these important words and also announcing the work that we are undertaking with the social dialogue, in particular Women in Rail. I would like the 4 panelists to be on screen, if you don't mind, and offer you the opportunity to reply briefly in 2 minutes, because we've been a bit longer in the first part to what we heard. I will go in the same order because we didn't have time to have this question and answer, but I would like also to ask one short question to each of you. Professor Ferreira, you heard from Barbara Thaler that is individual choice to go one job or the other, but we should offer opportunities for railways or to join railways. Do you see in the young people, university, that are more people taking this opportunity to join railway studies? What should we do if we would like to offer more this opportunity?
Well, I don't think that at this moment we are attractive for most of the younger people. We still give an idea of a very traditional area. We don't show so often as we should how important is the technological scientific development in this area, and so we are not so attractive from that point of view. And also that has to do with the gender problem, because many people look at railways activities as very physical activities. And the truth is that with automation, with digital, we become more important. The skills that are more important are the cognitive ones and the non-cognitive ones. That means numeracy, literacy, and also creativity, and so on. And is from that point of view that we have to work with the younger people and show them what really is this sector.
Thank you. I will go to Carlo Scatoli. One question. Matthias Roman was saying we need more European railways, and one of the topics is languages and digital to get a European mindset. Can the European Commission help this to get also more train drivers, European train drivers? How to achieve it? How to train all these people? Do you have ideas and proposals for us?
Yes, well, indeed, the Commission has been for many years promoting language skills and in general all the skills which are needed in transnational activities, which do include language skills. These are crucial, but also which do include something like a more open mindset, as it is mentioned. The European mindset, it is a very important dimension of cooperation at European level, cooperation between European countries. We are doing a number of action, of course. First of all, I would mention the important financial resources which are made available by the European Social Fund and by other funds too. For instance, the European Fund for Regional Development is also an important provider of opportunities for skills development, including language skills. For instance, for cross-border regions, this has been quite an important provider of skills. And we are also making available a number of services, in particular through the Europass platform, which help people communicate with each other. The Europass CV, which has been one of our biggest successes, there have been more than 130 million prepared by European citizens in the last 15 years. The Europass CV, as I said, has been developed specifically to help European job seekers, people who move from one country to another, who often find an obstacle because the kind of CV that you'd write in Portugal, say, may not be the same that employers expect in Germany or the other way around. So providing a common template for CV has helped transnational communication. The Europe platform also makes available a number of other instruments which help people communicate across countries.
If I may, to Barbara Thaler, one question. These are not questions that were prepared, just for the audience also. So feel free also to react. Listening to Professor Ferreira, we hear that we need still to reinforce our attractiveness for young people, to attract people to it. When I heard commissioners, we are able to offer green and meaningful jobs inside railways. I was wondering, the European Year of Rail, if we can bring more people on train on Erasmus, if we can use more Discovery EU to promote railways and to get young people closer to it. What do you think could be a good conclusion of the European Year of Rail? You are now, yes. We cannot hear you.
Okay, sorry for that. I was not allowed to unmute my microphone, so now it's working. Yes, Alberto, you asked me about the Year of Rail when you introduced me, and I didn't touch upon the Year of Rail specifically. So thanks for giving that question again to me. But of course, everything we do within the Year of Rail would be very good for the sector, even for the young people. So yes to your question. But let me give for 1 minute a few insight what we discussed on the European of Rail, especially when it comes to employment and on especially when it comes to careers in the rail sector. As you can imagine, education and employment has been discussed among the usual party lines. Let me put it like this. Social Democrats and the left laid a strong emphasis on safeguarding existing jobs and on the fight against social dumping. And also the Greens laid more emphasis on education and upskilling. And together with Renew and ECR, we as EPP put also the topic of competitiveness towards other modes of transport as a prerequisite for good jobs on the table. And as you see in the final text, the outcome was balanced, and I certainly do see the need to combine and secure fair and fair working conditions with the need to boost competitiveness. As the audience may recognize that competitiveness is really one of my favorite words, and for a good reason, because not every job in the sector is equally in demand, right? We have to be honest on that, both from an employee and an employer's perspective. So a one-size-fits-all approach will not work, I think. But all the elements I just mentioned have to be in place, of course, in different degrees, but nonetheless, they are very important. And one of our panelists touched upon the topic about the language for train drivers, and this is, in my opinion, a very important piece of upskilling possibilities within the rail sector. So designating English as a main language for cross-border operations was a hot topic during our discussions on the Year of Rail. I do believe this would improve this would bring a lot of improvement for the train drivers and for the sector. But obviously we are not there yet, but I will work on this. Believe me, this is, in my view, this is a very important point.
Thank you, Barbara. Now to Eckhard, just from this last wording, we need to, I would say, single language to move, to increase digital skills, in order to be able also to be more competitive, to go around Europe and so on. What is your assessment? Can we make it? Definitely, let me say, I would say that we can make it, but how? How we can make it, in your opinion?
Yeah, Alberto, I think I'm quite optimistic that we will see a strong trend to work towards perhaps more English-speaking train drivers, Mrs. Thaler. I think this is a strong trend. With the increase of cross-border trains and railways, this happens. And what we learned, Matthias Roman has mentioned that we have established in the Staffa context a focus group of experts and company representatives involved in cross-border railways, and we learned that there is quite a large number of experience and bilateral cross-border projects, exchange, and a huge spirit of the need to develop European mindsets. And I was quite surprised about this. I think in the context of Staffa, but also perhaps in the context of the EDA Rail project of the social partners, the issue of developing intercultural and language competences will definitely become stronger, because there is a strong commitment of all major groups and players that railways should be strengthened. And at the same time, of course, there are also very interesting projects going on in the context of digital tools, the support tools in the context of speech-to-speech translation at the level of European institutions like the ERA or the European RailNet network language program, as well as bilateral projects by making use of new possibilities in I would say machine-supported language conversation between infrastructure managers and operators across borders. So I see there a strong trend. What is still a lack is a kind of a European competence center. My wish would be, Professor Ferreira, that we at some stage have this kind of competence center at European level with the European Railway Erasmus scheme that many companies would like to develop. And we have, I think, in this year of rail, we have some good opportunities to develop. And with Staffa, we have also a longer term project that is not open and not limited to the partners involved, but addressing the whole of the sector.
Thank you very much. I think we are running short now. I have to apologize that we cannot continue the debate. I think it's an important topic for us. It has been very important. The European Rail will continue because we want to attract physical investment, but we want also to be attractive for people joining railways. And only through this we'll be able to, I would say, to gain our competition with the rest of the other. I picked some ideas. My idea was Erasmus on rail, but I understand also Erasmus for rail. So we should have people going around for rail in Erasmus program, and how to disseminate all this. We will reflect on this and probably will come back with some of you, as well as I think social dialogue is important. It's been highlighted. So we are not looking just for the young people, but also for the rest of the personnel inside our group. And we are trying to increase women in rail, because we want to attract also more women working in our companies. And let me say, on digital, we want to be digital also for our clients, internally for our operations, but also increase our digital content with passengers and our freight companies. I think we need to close here. It's a bit unfortunate, but some of these ideas I think we will use again, both in the political environment and university. Let me say, for university, we are trying to launch essays at CER. What do I mean? Each our CEO, we work with the best university in each country to develop ideas good for mobility and sustainable mobility. We need also still to define for Portugal, but I think we will come back. In many other countries we are, and we want to work on that. So thank you to everybody for having joined us and providing your ideas. And let's say, if you have other ideas, we can disseminate and continue. Thank you very much.